in early November. Now we start with Japan. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has announced that her government is exploring potential cooperation with the United States on developing rare earth minerals in waters off of Japan's easternmost island, Minamitori Island. Takaichi has emphasized the importance of diversifying rare earth supply chains for both Japan and the U.S. and confirmed that Japan will consider specific ways to collaborate with Washington. The government is planning a trial project to extract rare earth containing clays from the deep sea, some 6,000 meters below the surface. This follows previous remarks by former Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, who outlined plans to begin test drilling for rare earths this fiscal year, with full-scale drilling tests set for 2028. Both countries signed a document on this cooperation during a summit on October 28th, aiming to secure critical minerals amid concerns over China's dominance in rare earth production. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for joining us again. Good to see you. Doctor, how significant is this breakthrough if they succeed in finding rare earths in the coast of Japan, and the cooperation between U.S. and Japan on this issue?
This is indeed, there are huge potential in this case because indeed there are many rare earths in the sea. So seabed. So that's why if the Japan succeed to develop and take the rare earth from the seabed, this will be the game-changing mines we can find. And at the same time, there are many similar mines in the world. So that's why rare earth could be not rare. So that's that could possible. But at the same time, China also focusing on this issue. This is area of the Minamitori Island, the southern tip of Japan, and this year, China sent aircraft carrier around this region, Minamitori Island, and conducted their fighter jet taking off from the aircraft carrier and land repeatedly around it. So that's why China is focusing on this sea area. And there is a possibility, one of the reasons they're focusing on is this is area of the rare earth. And at the same time, indeed, in case of Japan, in case of the world, I should say first, indeed, in the world, 90% of the rare earth indeed came from China. But in case of Japan, Japan has already focusing on to avoid the reliance on China. So, but still 60% of the rare earth came from China. So that's why Japan want to find rare earth, but now the many countries face a similar situation. Mines are too popular, so that's why Japan should find the source of the rare earth themselves. And Prime Minister Takaichi was the Minister of the Economic Security who take charge of this rare earth mining. So that's why she is the expert. She knows where is, how to do that. That's why for the security, for the development mines, she decided to collaborate with the United States, which can send the aircraft carrier in this area. Of course, Japan's Navy is not weak, but at the same time, collaboration with the U.S. is very effective to push China out from this area. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Satoru, for sharing that. And, building on your answer about Takaichi bringing her expertise into this, how is this deal affecting her popularity? Is it boosting her popularity in this initial parts of her taking office? Right after her taking office, this deal has come.
This popularity, the survey indicates that more than 80% of the people support current Prime Minister Takaichi. This is a little bit too high in the other popularity, but at the same time it has achieved. But at the same time, why it has happened? Because she is new, because she is working well in the diplomatic field, in the ASEAN, APEC, or the U.S. President visit to Japan, all of it within 2 weeks. So that's why this was this was one kind of the good timing. She exploited it to rise her popularity. That's true. But at the same time, from now, the more regular work is coming. In this case, finding the source of rare earth is of course a good thing, but at the same time, view from the common people, this is only one of the achievements. So that's why more popular policies, of course, how to tackle the rising price of the live products. These are the more important issue for the many people in Japan. Or the, of course, national security itself is a matter. So all of these issues, one by one, she need to deal with. After that, popularity towards her regular work will come. That will affect her tenure as a prime minister, which is long term or short term decided by her work, her regular work. But that will come after she work well in these issues.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for joining us from Tokyo and sharing that insight. Now we move on to Bangladesh. Bangladesh's ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has admitted that mistakes were certainly made by security forces during last year's deadly student people revolt that forced her from her power. In a written interview, Hasina, who fled the country on August 5th, 2024, has stated that the security personnel faced fast-changing and violent circumstances and that some actions on the ground were mishandled. However, she insisted that senior officials acted in good faith to minimize loss of life. Addressing Bangladesh's political future, Hasina has expressed doubt that elections scheduled for February 2026 would be free or legitimate, given that her Awami League party remains banned. She has stated that she has not called for an election boycott, but urged supporters to avoid yet more violent uprising. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Andrew Latham. He's an international relations expert, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Professor, how does this Sheikh Hasina's admissions about security force errors affect the legitimacy of her government's handling of protests during her period, and what else does it reflect about her party as well as her governing?
Well, it's a rare admission of responsibility, if not guilt. I think that's one thing to be said in her favor. But it's also an attempt to reposition her on the electoral stage, maybe to find a way to lift the ban on her political party. There's not much of a tradition of free and fair elections in Bangladesh, of course. But the fact that A, she's taking responsibility, and B, is looking to pry open more space for a more inclusive democratic process, I think is on balance a positive sign. It remains to be seen what the current government will do in response.
And in what ways does the banning of the Awami League impacts the fairness and credibility of upcoming 2026 Bangladesh elections?
Well, the short answer is if you ban a political party that has tremendous political support, you are disenfranchising a huge percentage of the population. So that cuts against democracy and free and fair elections. On the other hand, given the track record of that particular party, a case could be made and is being made that it has no place at the electoral table as part of the electoral process. My own view is that perhaps whatever, especially given that she's admitted that mistakes were made, that party should be permitted to participate, and she should be allowed to run in that election. But I rather suspect that is not the view of the current government.
And how can Bangladesh navigate political stability and democratic restoration while addressing accountability for last year's violence and unrest?
Well, it is sort of standard practice during transitions to democracy that there's some kind of accountability, that the government that was governing, in this case when the violence was perpetrated, is held to account. That there is a truth and reconciliation process, as it were, that not just the particular acts of violence last year, but the more systemic efforts to suppress or repress the Bangladeshi people. So I'm not sure that that's on the table, but as I said, this is an interesting and perhaps healthy first step in that direction.
And how do you analyze or judge the current Bangladesh administrations and their handling of protests and governing of Bangladesh?
Well, an improvement, to be sure. Less violence. I think the deep structural issues are still at play, and there may well be a resurgence of student protests and other sorts of protests. And that will be the test of this government, whether it will revert to form, as it were, and suppress those democratic impulses, or whether it will, in fact, embrace liberal democracy of a sort and respond to the demands of the people with respect to economic or political, social mobility issues, freedom of speech, those sorts of things. The proof will be in the pudding, and the pudding hasn't yet been served up.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Professor Andrew Latham for joining us as an international relations expert